Okay, welcome to Rail Families United. We're going to continue with our series called The Players. In this video, we're going to be looking at former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of Canada under Justin Trudeau, and now Minister of Transportation, Chrystia Freeland, under Prime Minister Mark Carney. Okay, so again, Chrystia Freeland as our new Minister of Transportation, she's known of this rail scandal for at least 6 years. And so it came as zero surprise to me when the godfather of her son, now Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada, made her Minister of Transportation. Because they knew disclosure torpedoes would be coming this year, and not just in Canada, but in the US. And there is no way that the US rail unions would be, siding with the government of Canada in trying to hide these issues. Because, if the unions do not act in the interest of the members and of the union, all those union dues, they collect tax-free, those tens of millions of dollars in the US could now become taxable income for the IRS. And I seriously doubt that US unions would take the side of the government of Canada in these issues when their frontline workers are now so impacted because Canada did not do its job. So, Freeland, Minister of Transportation, let's just say I don't think that this was a demotion for her by Mark Carney. I think this was I'm putting you in this job to fix the mess you did not properly address as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of Canada. Because, hey, as buddy as Carney and Freeland are, World Economic Forum buddies, personal ties, to the point that Carney is her son's godfather. Well, I think, when the crap hits the fan, I wouldn't be surprised to see Carney throwing Freeland under the bus, just like she threw Trudeau under the bus last December. Okay, here's the same type of thing that I did with Trudeau, but here it's for emails to Chrystia Freeland. And these again are with attachments. And you can see here the email. She was definitely on the distribution list for the email Time's Up, Scandal Hiders, now it's my turn. So I think there's a good reason she's Minister of Transportation. Hopefully not for long. Okay, so folks, the reason I'm showing you this and why, there's a reason that President Trump and his administration are so hard, in my opinion, on the government of Canada. Yes, there's the trade issues. Open up your banking, open up your telecommunications and your dairy industries to us. But in the background, there's a lot more than that going on. Literally, the government of the United States has the government of Canada by the throat because Canada failed to address massive scandals impacting not only Canadian national security, but also U.S. national security. And, the people of Canada may turn a blind eye or stick their head in the sand and pretend, oh, Carney's going to fix everything. I don't think so. Not with what President Trump has on his desk as far as these issues. They are not going away. And again, the rail scandal's not even the biggest one. So ask yourself, if you're a Canadian and you're seeing Canada get clobbered by President Trump and his administration, and yeah, again, you've got open up your telecommunications, your banking, your dairy, but there's a lot bigger issues, in my opinion, in the background. And there's more than one way to have those issues addressed. And I'll tell you something. Carney, who's trying to sell us out in Canada to, he's trying to sell us out to, either China, as Canada keeps increasing its ties with the Chinese government, or he's trying to sell us out to the EU in matters of trade. Well, if it's between the EU and their World Economic Forum policies and their horrible immigration policies, which are now flowing into Canada, And, it's between the EU or China or join the US. If it comes to that, if Canada is brought to its knees by President Trump, I'm here to tell you there may be very good reason why the US wants to bring Canada to its knees, given the massive scandals the government of Canada has been hiding. And again, the rail scandal's not even the bigger one. And the liabilities in this other one, in my opinion, I'm sorry, but I would say at least 100 times more. So, personally, as a person residing in Canada, when I know what I know, and as an MA in finance, again, sell us out to the communists or to the EU or join the US and become a powerhouse in trade? I'm all for 51st state, folks. Knowing what I know, I am all for 51st state. So, people need to wake up in Canada, and that has not happened ever. Okay, folks, if you look at when Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland threw Justin Trudeau under the bus in December of 2024, you kind of have to look at other issues that were going on with the government of Canada at the time that this happened. So if you look, I gave here a calendar for December of 2024, and there's 3 dates that are circled, the 13th, the 14th, and the 16th. So on the 13th would have been the Friday that she was told by Trudeau that she would no longer be serving as finance minister, per the snippet here above on the right with the red line. So she found out on the Friday that she's no longer going to be Minister of Finance. She was supposed to release the deliver the fall economic statement showing that the government's budget deficit had just ballooned under the Trudeau administration. She was supposed to deliver that on the 16th, which is the day she quit, just hours before she was supposed to table that report. Now, what happened in between those two things? Well, on Saturday, when nobody's looking, you know, there's always a never waste a good crisis, and always make sure there's a diversion going on so that we can hide what might be going on behind the scenes. If you look at what happened on Saturday, the day between when Freeland was told she would no longer be Minister of Finance and the day where she was supposed to table this big financial report, well, on that Saturday, what happened? In the Canada Gazette, which is the official publication for the government of Canada, lo and behold, there's an order to repeal the Railway Employee Qualification Standards Regulations, which is the very regulation tied to the rail scandal, the regulation which has been so violated under Transport Canada and the government of Canada. And now the government of Canada all of a sudden wants to rewrite this regulation. That's what we're now in the process of doing under new Minister of Transportation, Chrystia Freeland, under Mark Carney. So I think that this little resignation thing was potentially a lot more planned and thought out than most people think, because we can slip in that order to repeal the Railway Qualification Standards Regulation, then Chrystia Freeland's going to come in, as the new Minister of Transport under Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister, and she's going to overhaul that regulation. That's going to be one of her first duties when she's the new Minister of Transportation. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy the coincidental timing of all of this. That's just my opinion. You're free to form your own. But as Minister of Finance, the government of Canada, when she tried to throw Trudeau under the bus after he told her she wouldn't be Minister of Finance, whatever, or Deputy Prime Minister, whatever, when she tried to throw him under the bus, um, you know, you kind of have to laugh when you're watching all of this, but I think that there was a plan in place because the tensions were rising over finances and how will the government of Canada possibly explain the massive liabilities it could now be facing as we now know this massive scandal is about to be disclosed and we're all about to be exposed. And they've known that for, by the time she resigned, they had known that for at least 5 months. So I guess obviously they were working behind the scenes to get this order published and repealed. And I just love the timing of it. It's so perfectly timed. We're going to repeal this right as she's expected to table a budget, but she's going to resign within hours of having to do this massive financial report and, throw Trudeau under the bus. And we're going to hope to save the party that way and come up with a new leader and a new prime minister. I just don't buy the coincidence, folks. I think this was all planned ahead of time to hide what was going on behind the scenes as far as Canada's finances and the massive liabilities it could now be facing as, the government was about to be exposed for all the corruption at Transport Canada, the Transportation Safety Board, by the Minister of Finance in matters of huge financial fraud, and on and on and on. So I don't believe this is just coincidence. If you want to believe that, go ahead. You can go ahead and believe that. I don't. I'm not that naive anymore. Okay, so again, if you look at what was published, and again, this was in the Canada Gazette on December 14th, the day after Chrystia Freeland finds out that she's no longer going to be Minister of Transportation. This was published on the Saturday in the official publication of the Government of Canada. And then on that Monday is when she would create the uh, throw everything up in arms for the Government of Canada. She's going to resign on the day that she's supposed to table this key financial document showing how much finances, the budget deficit has just ballooned under Trudeau. Forget the fact that now it's expected to be, I think, maybe double or triple that under Carney. That won't be as big of an issue. You won't be seeing the Minister of Finance resigning over that one, the new Minister of Finance over in under Mark Carney. But Chrystia Freeland had to do the drama scene. And don't forget, Trudeau used to be a drama teacher, I believe. Yeah, I think he was a part-time drama teacher or something. And Chrystia Freeland, well, she was a former reporter for the Washington Post. So we're really good at spinning a story and, creating the drama and the illusions that we want to provide, in my humble opinion. So this is what was actually published. The day after she finds out supposedly that she's no longer Minister of Finance, and the Saturday before she decides to step down as a drama queen. Create the perfect distraction for what's going on behind the scenes, which was the publishing of this pertaining to the complete rewrite of now the Railway Employee Qualification Standards Regulation, which was now going to be called the Railway Personnel Training and Qualifications Regulations, um, which was going to be her new job when she was made Minister of Transportation under Mark Carney. So this was, what they published as far as what the new regulation would do. It would add two new positions critical to safety: remote control locomotive operations. Oh, that's an issue I had raised, but they basically had no training for that. A young girl by the name of Melissa Hines had been killed in a belt pack incident. There's a lot of accidents pertaining to belt pack. But in this case, she was killed due to a rollback, and there's a lot of issues I had uncovered with problems with remote control locomotive operations that I had referred to the government of Canada. Oh, so now we're going to include that and have a specific training program for that group, as well as rail traffic controllers. And again, that was another issue I had raised for Transport Canada, problems with rail traffic controllers, in addition to many, many others. And yes, I can absolutely prove that. So then there was the requirement for pairing of employees with less than 2 years experience. So there was going to be a requirement now in the regulation that you're not supposed to pair junior employees together. That if you're new to the industry, you shouldn't be working together in safety critical jobs. We're going to be fixing that through this new regulation. Well, that should never have been happening anyway, because under the old, training programs, which were revealed in R07 T0270, a railway investigation report pertaining to the Mac Yard incident in Table 1, you were supposed to have an experienced conductor with a conductor trainee. So this was already there. They're making it look like it's going to be a new thing to be in there. No, it's not a new thing. It was already in there. It was already part of the supposed training program that Transport Canada had, but we're going to make it look like this is a new requirement. Okay, well, it's all in how you word things and what you know and what you don't know as far as what you're reading, right? So they're making it look like this is a new requirement. I don't think this was a new requirement. Then the establishment of new types of training, continuing training, familiarization, training related to the specific operating environment, and training of employees who have not carried out their duties for 12 months or more. More issues that I had raised with the government of Canada in all of the emails and all the attachments I had sent it. And again, this whole continuing training, or more the familiarization training and whatever, I had raised all these issues, and familiarization and the need for an employee to be familiar with the territory in which they operate is already part of the Canadian Rail operating rules under general, I think it's point 10. That's where you'll find that. But we were violating that, and so we're going to make it look like this is a new requirement again. Then the integration of CRM, that stands for Crew Resource Management. That has to do with, I think, we're going to see in the next couple of pages, the maintenance of way guys wanted to be involved in this type of training, and they wanted a training program for those guys. We're going to touch more on that. Then a requirement to have training records for each person who takes the training and undergoes the examinations and evaluations required under the proposed regulations. Well, they were already supposed to have, training records kept. But they didn't have that in the case of conductor trainee Jason Clooney. The records had supposedly been thrown out by CN Rail. And that came up in the Occupational Health and Safety Tribunal hearing. So, but in the labor code, I believe that was provided as a labor code violation, I believe, by the Transport Canada Health and Safety Officer Tyrone Kowalski, when he was investigating the death of conductor trainee Jason Clooney. That was one of the issues he had raised, was the lack of proper training records. And so they were issued a violation of Part 2 of the Labor Code for that specific reason. So, and then it says, finally, the regulatory proposal seeks to repeal the existing Railway Employee Qualification Standards regulation and replace them with the proposed regulation, which is Chrystia Freeland's new baby as Minister of Transportation. But folks, let me tell you right now, there is a lot of problems with what they are proposing. And so this cannot be another turn a blind eye for 30 plus years to the fact that we haven't updated anything, we haven't changed anything, whatever. We've been totally violating the law at Transport Canada, the Transportation Safety Board, the Occupational Health and Safety Tribunal, as far as deceiving the public, breach of public trust, whatever. We're going to try and sweep that all under the carpet, right? Wrong. I would tell all rail companies, including Class 1 rail carriers in the U.S., keep a very close eye on this, because CN and CP have massive lines in the U.S., and you are most definitely going to be impacted by these issues also in the U.S. Now, folks, previously I was saying how all rail companies, Class 1 rail carriers in both Canada and the U.S., and actually all rail companies, whether or not you're a smaller rail carrier, you should all be keeping very much a close eye on the rewrite of this new regulation. But that applies not just to rail companies. It also very much applies to rail investors and rail customers. If you are a rail customer, you had better get involved in these issues. Here you've got feedback that was provided by one of the unions, the United Steelworkers. This was from Local 204 in Canada, where they're saying, while we strongly support the modernization of the training and qualification framework for safety critical positions, we urge Transport Canada to extend these regulations to include safety sensitive positions, specifically maintenance of way employees. In other words, the guys who fix the tracks and the signals. Oh, but Transport Canada doesn't want to include them in their training programs. Why not? Isn't it important that guys be properly taught how to check a hot box? Oh, Minister Freeland, let me tell you something. And we're going to get into the CBC as another player. But CN Rail has failed to disclose all of its incidents. Okay? My child was recently involved in an incident, specifically a derailment at CN Rail. Never reported to Transport Canada. And the next car that was supposed to derail would have been a dangerous goods car. And it turns out that, geez, the train had just gone over a hot box, and the hot box did not pick up the fact that the train had an overheating bearing, and so the train had a derailment. Why wasn't the hot box working properly, Minister Freeland? How often are those things checked and maintained? And are they being checked properly? Well, these would be issues for maintenance away guys. Are they not being trained properly in how to maintain those, how to check them and make sure they're working? In the US, they've let go about 1/3, I believe, of the people that are involved in maintenance and all of those types of jobs in the rail industry in about the last 6 years. If you haven't already looked at it, I strongly encourage you to look at the video. It's a YouTube video called Railroad Workers Anthem by Brandon Petty. Look at that and very closely listen to the narration at the beginning of that video, where they talk about how the rail industry in the US is just being devastated. And geez, the last 6 years, what could have happened in the last 6 years? Oh, wait, Minister Freeland, that's when Canada really started to allow these guys that you should have prosecuted, in my humble opinion, to escape to the US rail industry, to do their damage there and destroy that industry. Right, Minister Freeland? So, if maintenance away guys want to be included in training, we haven't updated the Railway Employee Qualification Standards Regulation in Canada in 38 years. Well, you know what, Minister of Transportation Freeland? We don't have another 38 years for you to get it right. Do this properly and include standards and include maintenance away guys in the training and the regulation the way they want to be included. Not just your little half-ass, I'll include this little part on communication and situational awareness. Well, we all know how good situational awareness training is when it comes to things like the death of conductor trainee Jason Clooney, where his situational awareness was absolutely discussed in that railway investigation report, as you tried to use that as an excuse for Transport Canada trying to hide its own violations of the law. So situational awareness, Miss Freeland, that's an assumption when there's a death. You don't know what the employee who died had as far as his situational awareness. It's completely an assumption by Transport Canada, a great way to spin the facts and twist the story to give the story du jour that we want to give in railway death investigation reports, as was done in the death of conductor trainee Jason Clooney. So, maintenance away guys want to be included and have proper training? Give it to them. And if you're a rail customer, if you're a rail investor, if you are a big activist, investor that wants to take over a board, you'd better address these issues. Oh, and Minister Freeland failed to include these, given what maintenance away employees are all going to be finding out via all these videos and all of the breach of public trust and what you've been hiding and how you've been treating rail families and frontline rail workers. Boy, if one of these maintenance away guys dies and you refuse to give them proper training, you should be sued personally and thrown in prison, in my humble opinion. You need to include these guys in proper regulation and training programs. They're asking you for it, give it to them. Stop trying to protect rail carriers, because by not providing proper training, again, it's another way to decrease costs and increase efficiencies and maximize shareholder wealth for all these big, activist investors and rail investors. Well, you know what, Miss Freeland? They're not the ones who move the goods and move your economy. Those are your frontline rail workers. So stop putting their lives at risk. And if you don't believe you're putting their lives at risk, again, look at things like the Railroad Workers Anthem. Because there are a lot of times when the foreman's limits get passed and violated, and a train moves past foreman's limits, and yeah, you've got guys working on the track, and there's a train barreling down the track coming right for them. Because there hasn't been proper training and, making these guys run faster to avoid being hit when there can be equipment on the tracks. And if you're at a bend, oh my gosh, a train rounding a bend after it violates foreman's limits, and we're going to get into that with the issue of managers at the controls and all kinds of stuff as far as people at the controls who don't know what the hell they're doing. Well, and you've seen those documents, Minister Freeland. You've known about these issues, all these issues that you're talking about in your new proposed regulation. You've seen all of them. If maintenance away guys are chiming in and saying, we want proper training, obviously they don't have it. And that should be an issue for everybody. And the next thing here, the rationale for expanding regulations to maintenance away employees. It says maintenance away employees work in environments that present significant safety risks. Their responsibilities such as track maintenance, signal repair, and infrastructure integrity, which would have to do with hot boxes and the likes, and properly putting in tracks, properly checking for cracks in the rails, for anything that can cause derailments, are critical to the overall safety of railway operations, as the duties performed by safety critical positions. Failures in safety of railway operations as the duties performed by safety critical. Okay, I'm sorry. I have only one eye. I'm legally blind in one of my eyes. Let me try this again. Failures in maintenance can directly result in derailments, accidents, and operational disruptions, underscoring the need for equally stringent training standards. They're absolutely right. There is no excuse for Chrystia Freeland to want to exclude these guys from proper training standards in the new regulation. So people get on top of Transport Canada and, chime in. And families, if you have a maintenance away guy who dies because Chrystia Freeland doesn't provide proper training in spite of everything she's known and what she's been hiding for years, in my opinion, throw that woman in jail. All right, so if we continue here with the concerns raised by the United Steelworkers Maintenance of Way guys, it says here under human factors in rail incidents, um, the proposed regulations acknowledge that human errors is a primary cause of railway incidents. Maintenance deficiencies, often stemming from inadequate training or oversight, can have severe consequences. Addressing these risks requires extending rigorous training qualification and pairing standards to maintenance of way employees. And they're absolutely right in this. Then it talks about on-the-job training and mentorship. The introduction of pairing requirements for less experienced employee in safety critical roles is commendable. A similar framework for maintenance of way employees would provide them with critical hands-on experience under the mentorship of seasoned workers, reducing errors caused by inexperience. And again, you need to remember, when my child was qualified as a newly qualified conductor, that, they were supposed to be on probation for 6 months before they were really, considered fully qualified by the union, and they were still subject to dismissal in that 6 month period. So if you're on probation, if you haven't been trained properly, you shouldn't be working alone when you're an employee who's on probation. You should be with a more seasoned employee. And the same would be true for maintenance away guys, because you shouldn't have somebody who is just new to the company training somebody else, and the errors get exponentially worse as you've got less and less and less experienced people providing the training. And that's absolutely what is happening in places like CN Rail, as clearly demonstrated in the Railway Death Investigation Report pertaining to the death of conductor trainee Jason Clooney. Then you've got crew resource management. This is the CRM that we saw previously, where they're saying the integration of CRM into training for safety critical positions is a progressive step. Including maintenance away employees in CRM training would enhance communication, teamwork, and decision making within maintenance teams, further reducing risk. Okay, this last one seems to be the last one that Minister of Transportation Freeland is willing to give the maintenance away guys, is the CRM training for communications, situational awareness stuff. The fluff stuff, not the actual hands-on in the field work that these guys need to do. Oh, we don't want to give you proper training that is under regulations, which would be enforceable in court for that. We want to help maximize the rail carriers' shareholder wealth by, not providing proper training to frontline rail workers, because that's basically what Chrystia Freeland is advocating for. Not acceptable, Ms. Freeland. And again, if you're a rail family and there's a maintenance away guy in your family and that person gets killed, given everything being disclosed in all these videos, I would strongly encourage you, if Freeland does not include maintenance away guys in proper training programs under the regulation, the new proposed regulation, that woman needs to be sued personally and thrown in jail. And that's my humble opinion. And I will help you to do so. Okay, so as we continue here with what the maintenance away guys are suggesting, it says alignment with railway safety objectives. The Railway Safety Act aims to ensure the highest standard or safety standards across all facets of railway operations. That's true, all facets of railway operations. By incorporating maintenance away employees into these proposed regulations, Transport Canada can establish consistent training and oversight standards for all personnel whose roles impact railway safety. So clearly, if they're asking for that, kind of means they don't have that yet. We don't have 38 years for Transport Canada to get this right. So again, if Freeland doesn't give these guys what they're requiring, what they want, as far as, training standards and proper oversight and whatever in the regulation, like I said, any maintenance away guy dies in Canada, I will help that family to sue that woman and throw her in jail if necessary. We don't need a transport minister like Chrystia Freeland, who's got entirely too many conflicts of interest to be in this job. Now, if you look here lower down, specific recommendations, it says expand the scope, and so amend the proposed regulations to formally include safety sensitive positions such as maintenance of way employees, ensuring their training aligns with safety critical roles. Then introduce pairing requirements, implement a structured pairing framework for maintenance of way employees to facilitate mentorship and bridge experience gaps. Then it's got integrate the CRM training, require CRM training for maintenance of way employees to improve teamwork, communication, and situational awareness. Yeah, communication's important. Situational awareness is important, but that stuff can also be twisted, as it was in the case of conductor trainee Jason Clooney's accident report. These enhancements will strengthen the proposed regulations, creating a more comprehensive safety framework and ensuring that all railway workers contribute effectively to safe operations. Why would Chrystia Freeland not want to give proper training to the maintenance of way guys, who are the ones who maintain the tracks, the bridges, the equipment, the signals, the hot boxes, all of it? What's your excuse, Ms. Freeland? Is it wanting to maximize shareholder wealth? Is it, what is your excuse exactly for leaving this critical group out of the new proposed regulation? I'd love an answer to that one. And perhaps all rail customers and rail investors would like a good answer to that one too, in addition to all frontline rail worker families, especially those who have maintenance away employees in their families. Okay, so this is going to conclude the video on Chrystia Freeland, who is now the Minister of Transportation in Canada, who is supposed to overhaul the Railway Employee Qualification Standards regulation. And again, I would encourage all rail investors, rail customers, all rail unions to keep a very close eye on this one so that it is done properly, because we cannot afford to wait 38 years for Transport Canada to do its job. And quite frankly, no one who's been a rail partner in crime, and I would say, in my opinion, that includes Chrystia Freeland, Transport Canada, the Transportation Safety Board, and the Occupational Health and Safety Tribunal of Canada. If you were a rail partner in crime, you really should not be overseeing the overhaul of this regulation. There are too many conflicts of interest. And so that's all I'm going to say on this one, and I will see you on the next video on players.